How does the Jump 1000 from VTOMAN stack up to the venerable Jackery Explorer 1000? Is there a new sheriff in town? Let's find out. As you may or may not know, I've done a variety of power station reviews. So at this point, when I'm looking at potential products to review, I'm really looking for things that have standout features or things that are very different than things that I've reviewed before. And so when the people at VTOMAN reached out and said, would I be interested in reviewing their Jump 1000, I looked at the specs and thought, well, this is actually a pretty unique power station. So I was very interested in checking it out. So the question is, how does it really stack up to the Explorer 1000? But before we do that, let's rewind a little bit and get this thing out of the box so you can see what it comes with. A whole sheet of stickers. Actually, a very nice carrying bag. None of the other power stations that I have reviewed so far have come with a nice carrying bag. I will say that the Jackery has a carrying bag, but it's fairly low budget. This is actually a nice one. Let's see what's inside here. All right, quite a bit. Now, the reason they call this the Jump 1000 is because it comes with jumper cables. So you can actually jump your car with this thing. Not just recharge the battery, but actually jump the car. So that's pretty cool. So 12-volt adapter to a DC 5521, so 5.5mm cable, an AC charge brick with a 5.5mm on it, and a power cable. And we got a couple other things. Got a nice little user manual here. Cool. And then just some friendly user tips here. All right, let's get the thing out. Very much like the Jackery 1000, it's got 3 AC outputs. Looks like 4 Type A USB ports, including a quick charge port, and then 2 Type C USB ports. So 6 USB ports total. That's pretty good. I haven't seen this many USB ports on something in that 1000 watt class. Now this is a 1000 watt continuous operating. I think it's a 2000 watt peak, and it's got about I think 1.4 kilowatt or 1400 and some watt hours capacity. So it's almost 50% higher capacity than the Jackery 1000, even though it's still in the 1000 watt category. Anyway, let me go live with this thing for a few weeks and find out what it does, what it doesn't do. And I'll report back in just about 2 seconds. And we're back. So it's been a little over 3 weeks, closer to 4 weeks actually, now that I've been kicking this thing around, the Jumpman 1000 versus the Jackery Explorer 1000. And I've got to say, I'm really impressed with the VTOMAN Jump 1000. Despite the fact that I still like the Jackery 1000, but for reasons which I'm going to get into in the next couple of minutes, if I were doing this all over again, there's pretty much no question I would prefer this unit over this unit. And we're going to talk about why right now. So first of all, let's talk about battery chemistry. This is a LiFePO4 lithium iron phosphate battery chemistry. And so you get up to about 3,000 cycles rated, where you can maintain at least 80% of its original capacity, whereas all of the Jackery units use a lithium cobalt chemistry, which is rated for around 200 or 300 cycles, where you get about 80%. You can expect to get keep about 80% of your original capacity. So for that reason alone, the VTOMAN Jump 1000 has a significant advantage over the Explorer 1000. So in terms of battery capacity, this is a little over 1,400 watt hours. This is right at 1,000 watt hours. So a full 40% more battery capacity than the Explorer 1000. But as you may know, not all of that capacity is always accessible to us, especially if we're pulling power through the AC outlets and we have to use the AC inverter. There is always going to be a little bit of efficiency loss based on the efficiency of the inverter. So I wanted to find out what is the sort of minimum usable capacity of both units. So I used a heat gun, and I'll put a quick little video up here to show that. But I used a heat gun that outputs a little over 1,000 watts, about 1,050 more or less, plus or minus 5 watts. And I ran both units down, all the way down, and I used a watt meter on it to determine how much power it used in that time. So the Jump 1000 gave me 1,189 watt hours using that rapid drain test with the heat gun. And so that equates to 84.4% efficiency. Now, That usable watt hours of 1189 on this is, as I'm saying, the minimum, because if you were to draw the power down at a less aggressive rate, say something in the 500 or maybe 300 watt range, and just like running other smaller things, you're going to get more than 1189 watt hours out of this thing. But I was really challenging these two units to draw power down pretty much at the maximum continuous watt range of just over 1,000 watts. And on the Jackery, I got 837 watt hours. So it has a current minimum efficiency of about 83.5%. Now this one is a couple years old, but it really doesn't have that many full charge cycles on it. I would say it's probably got less than 25 or so full charge cycles on it. So I wouldn't expect its capacity to have been impacted dramatically, but probably somewhat. So I'm going to call that kind of a wash. Both of these things have similar performance in terms of AC inverter efficiency, but this still does give you significantly more usable capacity than the Jackery does. Now I also did a hairdryer test on this. What? You don't think I need a hairdryer? All right, it's my wife's hairdryer, whatever. It draws well over 1,000 watts into the 1,400 watt range, and I wanted to see how both units performed, and they both performed roughly the same, as you'll see. And there we go, it just shut off. So I got, 20 seconds out of it at 1,400 watts. So this is actually pretty good. All right, so I got about 14 seconds out of that, if I counted right. Cut us off. So we got just a few more seconds maybe out of the Jump 1000. Then we did the Explorer 1000, but that's a good comparison, because both of these units actually do quite well, exceeding that 1,000 watt continuous. I thought the Jackery's performance was fantastic, and the Jump 1000's performance here is just a little bit better. So that's pretty impressive. And also another similarity between the units is that from a no-load AC inverter draw, or a parasitic capacity loss when you're running the AC inverter without a power draw. So any of these units, or any AC inverter, is going to consume a little bit of power when it's running, whether you're actually plugging something into it or not. So I wanted to find out how these units performed, and both of them performed basically the same. You lose about 1% per hour, up to about 5% of your capacity, your total capacity, and then the units realize that there's no power draw and they turn the AC inverter off. So again, that's kind of a wash between these two units. So a couple other similarities. Both of these have pass-through charging, both on the DC and the AC side. Not all units will give you AC pass-through charging, but both of these definitely do. So you can charge it via the AC adapter or through solar while you're running other devices off the AC inverter on both these units. So that's basically a wash as well. And they both have 2-year warranties. Now the manual on this says it has an 18-month warranty, but the Amazon listing says it's 2 years. I did confirm with the manufacturer just before I started filming this to make sure I was giving you the correct information, and they confirmed that they did increase it to 2 years, so that is the correct number. It is a 2-year warranty, so that is basically the same on both units as well. So I did some solar charging comparisons between the two units. I'm going to run some video of that now, and I'll apologize in advance. I forgot that my stabilization was off on my camera when I did that, and it's a little shaky, so hopefully hang in there with me on that. The specs on the Jump 1000 is basically 200 watts solar input max, DC max, and you can see there's 2 DC input connectors here on the left side. Now there's the max on the Jackery, I think, is spec'd at 163 watts, but I've never got it anywhere close to that. And it does have 2 connectors, an Anderson and an 8mm, but you can only use one at a time. So I've got a 200 watt rigid panel from Bouge RV, and then this is my All Powers polycrystalline 200 watt panel. So I just want to see what the difference in output or input actually performance from solar is on these 2 power stations. 110 watts, 112 watts from the panel in the back, and I can easily, without having to buy a parallel adapter, plug in a second panel, and you'll see that now, if I keep the panel lit, I'm getting 162 watts input here, and I'm not going to be able to do that on the Jackery. In fact, let me go get my parallel adapter, and we'll see if we can connect both panels into the Jackery. All right, so as you saw when we connected both panels on the input here, we were getting about 160 some watts or so. like 162 or so, and that's about what the Jackery is supposed to max out at. So let's see if we can actually get that. So I've got the Jackery parallel adapter here. So I've got each panel coming in through the 8mm connectors on the bottom, and then it outputs to an Anderson connector on the power station side. So let's plug that in and see what we get. Let's see if we can get more than 162 watts. I have never gotten more than about 115 out of this. And see, this is what I'm complaining about. We're maxing out at 106 watts. I think 115 watts is the max input I've ever gotten into this Jackery from solar. But I'm definitely being capped here. Kind of annoying. So definitely DC input advantage jump 1000. Sorry, Jackery, it's not quite getting it done. So as you can see, having two DC inputs on this thing is actually a significant advantage. I don't need to have an extra parallel adapter. I can have two panels. The only caveat is that they have to be 5.5mm, that DC 5521 connector that these ports use, not the 8mm style connector or the Anderson connector that, like, for example, the Jackery uses. But that's not a big deal. I have no trouble finding those 5.5mm connectors for pretty much all the panels that I own except for the Jackery. So that's not really even a thing. By the way, if you're finding any of this information useful or helpful at all, please consider clicking that like button down below. I'd really appreciate that. Maybe consider subscribing if you're not already a subscriber, but let's get back into it. So let's talk about some of the cool, unique features that this has. We already mentioned that it has a really neat option to jump start, and that's not a feature that I've had to use yet. But it is there, and it's really nice to know that in an emergency, if I'm out in the middle of the woods somewhere and somehow my battery gets drained, I don't have to worry about recharging it slowly over a few hours. I can actually jump start it with this particular unit, and that's kind of cool. You can't do that with the Jackery. Now, another cool feature that this has is you can buy an expansion module for it, and it actually plugs into one of these ports right over here. So you can buy another 1500 watt hour expansion module, and that gives you basically 3,000 watt hours of capacity. Let's talk about pricing, because this is the area where this thing absolutely just destroys the Jackery Explorer 1000. This thing is running around $1,100 right now. And this thing, if you go look it up, it's like $1,200 list on VTOMAN's website. But that's their normal list price. And for only being $100 more at list price for 40% capacity, that alone is already a pretty decent deal. But that's not what they're selling it for right now. The VTOMAN guys sent me a link to Amazon that I put in the description below that automatically applies a discount code and then you can use that in conjunction with a coupon clip checkbox on Amazon right now that gives you an additional $600 off in addition to the 8% discount code. And that brings the price on this 1400 watt hour power station down to less than $600. I did not stutter. That's 1400 watt hour power station for less than $600. You can get a couple other versions of this or bundles. They also sell it, bundled with the 1500 watt hour expansion, giving you almost 3,000 watt hours of capacity. And when you apply the coupon, it's like under $1,400 for nearly 3,000 watt hours, which is also about half of the price you're normally finding these kinds of capacities for right now. So I don't know how they're doing this, but this is a fantastic deal. They also have the Jump 1500, which is basically this unit with just a little bit more capacity, but the bigger deal is it's got a larger AC inverter, so it'll handle up to 1500 watts continuous and up to 3000 watts peak. And the price on that one is only $872. So that is also a fantastic deal. So you can get any of those through that link in the description below if you check it out. Because if you're in the market for something in that 1000 watt to 1500 watt capacity, you're not going to find a better deal than this. I really don't believe, because I've been looking, and this thing has just blown me away in terms of the price advantage. Now, I also do like the fact that this thing has a total of 6 USB ports. So 2 of them are PD100 ports, the Type-C PD100 ports. So you can use these to power things like any kind of modern laptop that takes Type-C charging. you can handle it with this because it gives you up to 100 watts output out of these Type-C ports. And these are output-only ports. These are not input ports. And then you've got 4 other Type-A ports, one of which is a Quick Charge 3.0. Now, in terms of cons, things that I don't like, there just aren't that many things. They're so nitpicky. So again, I don't care for these LED screens. They're hard to see in the sunlight. In moderate to low light, they're fantastic. You can see them, they're super bright. But in the sunlight, they're kind of hard to see. That's my only complaint. They're harder to see through a camera lens than they are in person, I will say that. But that's my only complaint about the LCD or the LED display. Other than that, the display is fine. And maybe I would have liked to have there been a dust cover on here, like a little plug over the 12-volt car adapter. I think that would be nice to have that covered up. But other than that, I've just got no complaints about this thing. So what's my bottom line on this? I think it's absolutely a no-brainer right now, especially given the current price situation with this thing, to look at the VTOMAN Jump 1000 versus pretty much anything else, and especially versus the Jackery Explorer 1000. The pricing is absolutely phenomenal in this thing, and I think if you're currently looking at something in that 500 to 600 watt range, and you might consider something in the 1,000 watt range or a little bit higher, you might as well look at something like this because you're going to absolutely get more for significantly less with this Jump 1000, at least as the pricing as it is right now. The pricing could change depending on when you watch this video, but if you jump on it quickly, I don't know how long they can keep doing this deal because it really is the best deal that I've seen in power stations. And hey, if you think that you know of a better deal in power stations than this one right now, please leave that in the description below because I want to go check that out because I don't see how that's possible. Anyway, that's about all I got. Thanks for joining me. I hope to see you in the next one. Until then, have fun out there. The other thing that I think is the same for both have, but let's get into pricing because this is that. If you go into Amazon right now and look up this listing or click, do I like how I said that? I don't know where to start.